Ravi was known in his village as a man who loved the jungle more than the market, more than the tea shop, and more than any busy road where people walked. He was young but strong, and he had a calm way about him. Most people in the village liked to spend their days farming, fishing, or sitting in the shade, but Ravi's heart always pulled him toward the forest. The tall trees, the sound of birds, the rushing of small streams, and even the buzzing of insects gave him a feeling that no busy place could give. Every week, sometimes even twice, he would pack a small bag with a water flask, some dry bread, and a knife to cut through plants. He would tell his mother that he was going to explore. She often told him not to go too far because the jungle was endless and deep. But Ravi always smiled and promised he would return before night. He had been walking those paths since he was a boy, and he thought he knew them all. One bright morning after heavy rain the night before, Ravi left his house with his small bag and entered the jungle once again. The soil was wet and soft, and his sandals pressed deep into the ground as he walked. Drops of water fell from leaves onto his shoulders. The air smelled fresh like earth and rain. The forest seemed alive, every corner filled with small movements and secret voices. Ravi walked without hurry, enjoying every step. He saw butterflies moving in the light, monkeys jumping from branch to branch, and colorful birds flying above. The sound of the river nearby guided him forward. He followed no fixed path that day. He wanted to see where his feet would take him. Hours passed. The sun climbed high above the trees, sending beams of gold through the green ceiling of leaves. Ravi was not tired yet, but he decided to rest for a while. He found a fallen log and sat down. He drank water from his flask, ate a piece of dry bread, and looked around. It was then, while resting, that something caught his eye. Far ahead, through the thick trees, something reflected the sunlight in a way that no stone or stream could. It was a flash of silver, smooth and sharp. At first he thought it might be a piece of glass or a tin sheet left by woodcutters. But this place was far from any road or camp. Nobody came this deep into the forest. His heart filled with curiosity, Ravi stood up and walked toward the light. The ground was uneven, full of roots and wet vines. He had to push away branches, bend under fallen trees, and step carefully over muddy patches. The closer he came, the clearer the object became. His steps slowed and his eyes grew wider. There, hidden between giant trees and covered by moss and vines, stood something he had never expected to see in his life. It was huge, shaped like a giant bird with broken wings and a long body. It was not a living bird, it was a machine. Ravi's breath caught in his chest. He was standing in front of an old airplane. He walked closer, almost not believing his own eyes. The wings were cracked, the body rusted, but the shape was still clear. The nose of the plane had sunk into the soil, and one side was torn open. Plants had grown through the windows and doors. Roots and branches wrapped around the metal like hands holding it in place. The jungle had tried to swallow the machine, but still it stood silent and strange. Ravi reached out and touched the body. The surface was rough with rust, but beneath the moss he felt cold metal. He stepped back and looked at the size. It was larger than any small village plane he had seen flying in the sky. It was longer, wider, and built with wood and iron, not like the modern planes he saw on posters. This one looked ancient, as if it belonged to another age. He tried to imagine how it came here. No one had ever spoken of such a thing in the village. The elders often told stories about treasures, lost kings, and hidden caves, but never about a giant flying machine resting in the jungle. Ravi walked around the plane slowly. On one side he saw what once had been markings, painted lines and letters, but they were too faded to read. The tail of the plane was broken, lying half buried in soil. He found windows, small and round, most of them cracked or missing. Inside he saw only darkness. His curiosity grew stronger. He wanted to look inside, but something about the air around the plane made him uneasy. The forest was strangely silent here. No bird called, no insect buzzed, no monkey jumped in the trees above. It was as if the jungle itself was holding its breath. Ravi stood in front of the torn opening. His heart beat fast. He wondered how long this plane had been here. Could it be 100 years? 200? He tried to remember how long people had been flying planes, but this design looked older than anything he had read in books at the school library. The thought made his skin shiver. He looked back once, half expecting someone to be standing behind him. But the forest was empty. Only the quiet trees surrounded him. He turned again to the opening. Dark vines hung like curtains and the inside looked like a cave. Taking a deep breath, Ravi pushed the vines aside and stepped 1 foot closer. His hand shook as he touched the edge of the broken door. He thought of the people who might have sat inside long ago. Did they survive the crash? Did they wander into the jungle and vanish? Or were they still here in some form, waiting? His heart told him this discovery was not just old metal. There was a story locked inside this plane, a story forgotten by the world, and he was about to open it. The air inside felt cooler than outside, carrying a smell of rust, wood, and something faintly sweet, like old fruit left in the sun. Ravi leaned forward, holding his breath. He knew his life would not be the same after this moment. What waited inside could change everything. Ravi stood at the broken opening of the strange airplane, his hand resting on the rough edge of rusted metal. The vines that hung across the door swayed lightly in the breeze, almost like they were trying to block him from entering. For a moment he thought about turning back. His mother had warned him many times about going too far. His friends would say he was crazy if he told them about this discovery. Yet his heart told him to go forward. He took one more deep breath and stepped inside. His sandals pressed against the uneven floor. Dust rose in the air and sparkled in the sunlight that slipped through cracks in the roof. The inside of the cabin was wide but strangely quiet. The air was heavy, filled with the smell of old wood, iron, and earth. As Ravi's eyes adjusted, he began to see the details around him. The seats were still there, lined in 2 rows, but they were torn and broken. Some were covered in moss, others in thick vines. A few had collapsed into the floor. The walls of the plane were lined with strange carvings and symbols, not like any modern design. They looked like handcrafted decorations, as if this was not only a machine but also a piece of art from another age. He touched one of the seats. The cloth fell apart like powder in his hand. He felt a strange sadness, as if the lives of people who once sat there still lingered in the air. He tried to imagine who they were. Were they travelers, explorers, or soldiers? He walked slowly toward the front of the cabin. His footsteps echoed faintly, though there should not have been any echo inside such a small place. The sound made him shiver. He stopped and listened. The forest outside was silent, and the inside of the plane was even more silent, yet he felt as though something unseen was listening back. On one side, he saw an old wooden box lying under a broken seat. It was half buried in soil that had blown in through the cracks over years. Ravi bent down and pulled it free. The box was small and locked with a rusted clasp. He shook it gently. Something inside rattled. He wanted to open it, but decided to wait. He slipped it into his bag. As he moved forward, he noticed another strange detail. The windows of the plane were round, and their glass was thicker than anything he had seen before. Even after so many years, most of them had not broken fully. Some still shone faintly, as if they were not made of normal glass. He wondered if the builders of this plane had known secrets that modern people had forgotten. The cockpit stood ahead, separated by a broken wooden door. Ravi pushed the door slowly. It creaked but opened. The sight inside filled him with wonder. 2 large chairs faced a panel of instruments. The panel was covered in strange levers, wheels, and glass circles. Unlike modern planes, which had shiny metal and plastic parts, this one was built mostly of wood with iron fittings. The designs on the instruments looked almost hand-carved. Numbers and letters were marked in a language Ravi did not recognize. Some of the circles glowed faintly, though no power should have remained in them. He touched one of the levers. To his shock, it moved smoothly, as if it had been waiting for his hand all this time. The thought sent a chill down his spine. He pulled back his hand quickly and stared at the panel. Ravi sat in the pilot's chair. The seat was hard but still strong. From this view, he could see out the cracked windows at the endless green jungle around him. He imagined what it must have been like when the plane was flying above the clouds. The people inside must have felt powerful, like birds who had taken the sky for themselves. He noticed something lying on the floor near the seat. It was a leather book, old and thick. The cover was cracked and faded, but the pages inside were still safe. He picked it up carefully. On the first page there was writing, not in his language, but neat and strong. The ink had not faded. Whoever wrote this had used something unusual to make it last. Ravi turned the pages. He could not understand the words, but he saw drawings. Maps of unknown lands, pictures of mountains, seas, and stars. There were sketches of strange flying machines, some like this plane and some completely different. One drawing showed a city floating in the sky. Another showed people wearing long coats and helmets standing beside machines taller than trees. Ravi's heart raced. He did not understand the writing, but he understood the meaning. This was no ordinary traveler's journal. It was a record of something greater, something hidden from the world. As he studied the book, he felt the cabin grow colder. The air around him seemed to tighten. He looked up quickly, half expecting someone to be standing near the door. But no one was there. He was alone, yet the silence pressed on him like a heavy hand. He closed the book and placed it carefully in his bag beside the box. He knew these objects were too important to leave behind. Before leaving the cockpit, his eyes fell on something else. On the back of the seat, carved into the wood, was a single word. It was written in letters he could read, though he did not know the language of the book. The word was Aranya. He whispered it aloud. The sound echoed faintly, though it should not have. The plane seemed to respond, the silence shifting slightly as if the name itself was alive. Ravi did not know what it meant, but he knew it was important. He rose from the chair and moved back toward the opening of the plane. His bag felt heavier now, not only with the objects but with the weight of their mystery. He stepped outside into the sunlight, blinking against the brightness after the dark cabin. The jungle looked the same, yet something inside Ravi had changed. He no longer felt like just a hiker wandering in the forest. He felt like a messenger who had been chosen to discover something forgotten. As he walked a few steps away from the plane, he heard a sudden sound behind him. It was faint, like a soft hum coming from inside the machine. He froze. He turned slowly, but the plane was silent again. The vines hung still and the forest remained quiet. Was it his imagination, or had the plane itself come alive for a moment? Ravi tightened the straps of his bag. He knew he could not stay here for long. The sun was already lowering in the sky and his village was far away. Yet he also knew this was not the end. He had found something that wanted to be remembered. He began to walk back, but every few steps he turned his head to look at the hidden plane. Its broken wings reached out like arms, and the jungle seemed to guard it. The word carved in the wood echoed in his mind again and again. Aranya. What did it mean? Ravi did not know yet, but he felt sure that the answer would change his life forever. Ravi walked back through the jungle with slow steps, his mind heavy with questions. The sun was already lowering and golden light spread through the trees. Normally he enjoyed this time of day when the forest became calm and peaceful. But today he could not relax. His bag carried more than just food and tools now. Inside it lay the small locked box and the strange leather book filled with maps and drawings. Every step made him wonder more about the plane. Who built it? Who were the people who had sat in those broken seats? What was the meaning of the word Aranya carved into the wood? And why did the book show drawings of places and machines he had never seen before? When he finally reached his village, the sky was turning dark. Smoke rose from cooking fires and children were playing near the houses. His mother saw him coming and scolded him for being late, but Ravi only nodded quietly. He did not want to tell her about the discovery, not yet. Some secrets were too heavy to share. After eating a simple meal, Ravi went to his small room and shut the door. He lit a lamp and placed the leather book on the floor. Its cover looked older in the warm glow of the flame, and its edges seemed almost alive with age. He opened it slowly. The first pages were filled with neat writing in a language he could not read. But the drawings told their own story. He saw images of the sky filled with strange airships. Some looked like birds, some like giant floating boxes. One picture showed a circle of fire with a ship flying through it. Another showed men standing under the stars, pointing at patterns in the sky. Ravi turned more pages and found a map. It showed a jungle, wide rivers, and mountains. His eyes widened. The map looked very much like his own land, though drawn in an older style. In the corner of the map was a symbol. It looked like a bird with spread wings, and below it was written the word again. Aranya. He whispered it once more. The sound of it felt strange on his tongue, as if it was a word meant for another time. Ravi studied the drawings late into the night. He noticed that some pages were not filled with pictures but with numbers and symbols. He had never been good at numbers, but these looked different, almost like codes. They were written in circles and lines, not in straight rows. He wondered if they were instructions for building something. Finally, he closed the book and placed it carefully under his bed. His head felt heavy and he lay down to sleep. Yet even in dreams, the images returned. He saw the floating city, the glowing instruments and the strange plane rising into the clouds. He woke many times, his heart beating fast. The next morning, Ravi decided he needed help. He could not understand the writing in the book, and he could not open the box without breaking it. He thought of his friend Hari, who worked as a teacher in a nearby village. Hari loved old stories and often read books in many languages. If anyone could help, it was him. Ravi carried the book and the box carefully in a cloth bag and set off to meet Hari. The walk took almost 2 hours through fields and paths, but his mind stayed busy the whole way. He wondered if it was safe to show anyone these things. What if people laughed at him? What if they tried to take the objects away? Still, he trusted Hari. When he reached the small school, children were leaving and Hari was sweeping the floor. He looked up and smiled when he saw Ravi. "You look serious, my friend. What have you brought?" Ravi closed the door and placed the bag on the table. He pulled out the book first. Hari's eyes grew wide. He touched the cover gently, almost with respect. "Where did you find this?" Ravi hesitated, but then told the story, though not every detail. He spoke of walking in the jungle, of seeing a strange broken plane hidden among trees, and of finding the book and box inside. Hari listened carefully, his face serious. When Ravi finished, Hari opened the book and turned the pages. His eyes lit up. "This writing is old," he said. "Very old. It is not from our land, but I have seen similar letters in old texts. They speak of travelers who crossed the sky long before modern people learned to fly." Ravi leaned forward. "So this plane could be more than 100 years old?" Hari nodded slowly. "Maybe much more. Some words here suggest 2 centuries or more. If that is true, this plane is older than the planes we read about in history." They studied the maps together. Hari pointed at the word Aranya. "This word means forest in some old languages, but it may also be a name, perhaps the name of the ship or the place it was going." Ravi felt a chill. The word seemed to follow him everywhere. Hari then tried to open the small wooden box, but the lock was too strong. "We will need to be careful," he said. "Inside could be something delicate, maybe papers, maybe tools." "Do not break it in a hurry," Ravi agreed. He felt the weight of the mystery growing heavier. That night, Ravi returned home with more questions than answers. The forest outside the village seemed darker than before. He sat under the stars and thought about the book. If people had flown such planes 200 years ago, why did the world not remember? Why were there no stories about them? As he sat, he thought he heard a faint hum again, just like the sound he had heard near the plane. It was distant, carried on the wind, almost like a memory. He stood up quickly and looked toward the jungle, but the night was quiet. Still, the sound stayed in his mind as he went to sleep. He knew the journey was only beginning. The plane was waiting, the book was speaking, and the word Aranya was calling him back. The days after Ravi's meeting with Hari were filled with restless thoughts. He could not stop thinking about the strange plane, the old book, and the word Aranya carved inside the cockpit. He carried the box with him everywhere as if it might reveal its secret at any moment, but the lock held tight. One evening, when the sky was red with sunset, Hari came to visit Ravi's village. He carried a small bag of tools and a careful look on his face. "I have thought about the box," he said. "If we are gentle, we may open it without breaking what is inside." Ravi agreed, and the 2 friends sat together in Ravi's small room. The lamp burned between them, throwing long shadows on the walls. Hari placed the box on the floor and studied the lock. It was not like the locks they saw in markets. It looked handmade, carved from both iron and wood with a design of circles and lines. Hari touched it with respect. "This is old craftsmanship. Whoever made it knew secrets of metalwork." He worked slowly with small tools, tapping and turning. Ravi watched with nervous eyes, fearing the box might crack. Minutes passed, then an hour. The lock resisted at first, but finally, with a soft click, it opened. The friends held their breath. Hari lifted the lid carefully. Inside lay a collection of objects wrapped in cloth that had almost turned to dust. He pulled one piece of cloth aside, revealing a round glass disc. It was smooth and shining, though dusty. Strange lines and numbers were marked on it. Ravi picked it up. When he held it to the lamp, light passed through and created shapes on the wall, shapes of stars and circles like a map of the night sky. Hari whispered, "It is a star chart, but not like the ones we use. Look, these patterns do not match our sky." They placed it aside and unwrapped another object. This time it was a small device made of metal and wood. It had a handle and a turning wheel. When Ravi touched the wheel, it moved smoothly and a faint hum rose from inside. The sound was soft but clear, like the memory of the hum Ravi had heard near the plane. Hari stared in wonder. This device still works after so many years. I do not know what it does, but it is not ordinary. Next, they found several sheets of thick paper folded carefully. On them were drawings of machines. Some looked like flying ships, others like strange towers. Each drawing had symbols and numbers written beside it. Hari studied them, shaking his head. This is advanced knowledge. If these designs are true, they knew more than we do even now. At the bottom of the box lay a small object that caught Ravi's eye at once. It was a pendant, shaped like a winged bird, made of silver and stone. In the center of the bird's chest was a crystal that glowed faintly, though there was no flame or light near it. Ravi held it in his hand. The glow grew stronger as if it answered to his touch. He felt warmth spread through his palm, not burning but comforting, like the warmth of the sun in the morning. Hari gasped. That is no ordinary jewel. This crystal has power. It may have been used to guide the ship or to protect the people inside. Ravi closed his hand around it. He could feel a strange connection, as if the object was alive in some way. He placed it back carefully, but the feeling stayed with him. After they finished looking, they sat in silence. The lamp flickered, and outside the wind rustled through the trees. Hari spoke softly. Ravi, these objects are not just old things. They are pieces of knowledge lost to time. If this book and this box are from 2 centuries ago, then the people who built that plane were far ahead of us. Maybe they had cities in the sky. Maybe they traveled farther than we know. But something happened. Their story was buried, their plane forgotten. Ravi nodded slowly. And now the jungle has kept it safe until I found it. That night, Hari stayed in the village. The 2 friends hid the box under Ravi's bed along with the book. But Ravi could not sleep. His dreams were full of stars, flying ships, and the glowing crystal. Each time he woke, he heard the faint hum again, as if the device inside the box was speaking to him. The next morning, Ravi decided he needed to return to the plane. He had to see it again, to feel its presence. Hari agreed to join him. Together they packed food, water, and rope, then set off into the jungle. The walk felt longer this time. The forest was heavy with silence, and every sound made them turn their heads. Birds cried from far away. Monkeys moved in the trees, but the deeper they went, the quieter it became. When they finally reached the clearing, the sight of the broken plane filled them with awe again. Its wings stretched wide, covered in moss, and its nose still rested in the soil. Sunlight fell on it through the tall trees, making it look almost alive. Ravi stepped closer. It feels like it is waiting for us. Hari followed, studying the ground. Look at the roots. They wrap around the plane but do not break it, as if the forest protects it. They entered through the same opening. The air was cool inside, and the silence was deep. Hari walked to the seats and touched the walls. This design is not like anything I know. It is part machine, part craft, almost like the builders wanted it to be both beautiful and strong. Ravi went to the cockpit again. The panel of instruments still glowed faintly. He placed the pendant on the seat in front of him. At once the glow of the crystal grew brighter, and one of the glass circles on the panel lit up with soft light. Hari cried out in shock. It responds to the pendant. The plane still holds power, Ravi's heart pounded. He felt as though the machine was speaking to him, calling him to learn its secret. The faint hum rose again, clearer than before. He whispered, Aranya. At that moment, the light inside the glass circle grew stronger. Symbols appeared, glowing lines that formed shapes of stars, the same shapes they had seen on the glass disc from the box. Hari stepped back. It is showing us a map, but not of this world. Ravi stared in silence. He understood little, but he felt the truth in Hari's words. The plane was not just a machine. It was a message, a memory of people who had known great secrets, and now those secrets were waking again. He placed the pendant around his neck. The warmth spread through his body. The humming grew steady, almost like a heartbeat. Hari looked at him with wide eyes. Ravi, I think you were meant to find this. The plane has chosen you. Ravi did not answer. He only looked out through the cracked window at the endless jungle. Somewhere in the trees, the past was waiting, and the word Aranya echoed in his heart again and again, louder than ever before. Ravi stood in the cockpit of the old plane with the pendant glowing around his neck. The humming sound filled the air, steady and deep, almost like the breath of the machine itself. Hari stood beside him, his eyes wide with fear and wonder. The glowing glass circle on the panel showed stars and shapes, patterns that matched the disc they had found in the box. Ravi touched the panel gently and the lines shifted, forming a path through the stars. At the end of the path was a symbol of a bird with open wings, the same symbol drawn in the book. Hari whispered, "It is a map, Ravi. A map to where they were going, perhaps to where they came from." Ravi felt the warmth of the pendant grow stronger. He sensed that the plane was not simply a broken machine but a keeper of memory. It had waited for someone to return, someone who could listen to its silent voice. The humming grew louder. The whole cabin seemed alive. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the vines hanging at the door trembled. Hari stepped back nervously. "Ravi, maybe it is dangerous," but Ravi shook his head. "It does not want to harm us. It wants to tell its story." The glowing map faded and new images appeared on the panel. This time they were not stars but pictures, clear and moving like shadows on water. Ravi and Hari stared in shock. They were watching scenes from the past. They saw a city built in the clouds with tall towers that shone like silver. Ships like giant birds flew between the towers. People walked in long robes carrying devices that glowed with light. Then the scene shifted. The sky grew dark, storms rose, and fire spread across the city. Ships fell from the sky and towers broke apart. Hari whispered, "This was their world. They were people of the sky." The final image showed the very plane they were standing in. It flew through dark clouds chased by lightning. Inside, men and women sat with faces full of fear. The plane shook and then it fell. The picture ended and the panel went dark. The humming slowed until it faded completely. Ravi and Hari stood in silence. The jungle outside was quiet once more. Hari's face was pale. They were real. They had knowledge greater than ours, but they were destroyed, maybe by their own power, maybe by something else. And this plane was one of the last to escape. That is why it is here. Ravi touched the pendant. It still glowed faintly as if holding on to the memory. He thought about the book, the box, and the strange devices. They were not just objects. They were pieces of a forgotten world waiting to be found. He looked at Hari. "What should we do now? If we tell the world, people may fight over these things. They may destroy them for greed. But if we hide them, the truth will remain buried." Hari nodded slowly. "Knowledge is like fire. In the right hands, it gives light. In the wrong hands, it burns. We must decide carefully." They left the cockpit and stepped out into the sunlight. The plane looked silent again, just an old broken shell covered in moss. Yet Ravi knew it was alive in its own way, holding secrets of a lost sky people. That evening they returned to the village. Ravi kept the pendant with him and hid the book and box in a safe place. For days he could not sleep well. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the floating city and the falling ships. One night, while sitting outside under the stars, Ravi felt the pendant grow warm again. He looked up and the sky seemed clearer than ever. The stars shone bright, almost as if they were calling. For the first time, he wondered if the people of the sky were not fully gone. Perhaps somewhere far away their descendants still lived. Perhaps the map in the plane pointed to them. Hari visited often, and together they read the book. Slowly, with effort, Hari began to understand some of the old language. He discovered that the book was not only a journal but also a message. The last pages spoke of hope. They wrote that even if their cities fell, their knowledge must survive, hidden in the forests, waiting for those who were worthy to find it. Ravi's heart felt heavy with responsibility. He had not searched for glory, yet the secret had found him. The pendant, the plane, and the book were not accidents. They were gifts of history, and he was now their guardian. Weeks passed. Ravi continued his normal life in the village, helping in the fields, walking the forest, speaking kindly to neighbors. Yet deep inside he carried a hidden flame. He knew the world was larger than anyone around him imagined. He had seen proof that humans had once touched the sky in ways forgotten. One morning he decided to return to the plane alone. The jungle was quiet as before and the machine stood waiting. He entered the cockpit and sat in the pilot's seat. He placed his hand on the panel and whispered once more, "Aranya." The circle glowed faintly again. The map of stars returned, showing the path to the bird symbol. Ravi felt no fear this time. Instead, he felt calm, as if the plane was telling him that one day he must follow this path. He knew he could not leave now. His people needed him, his village needed him, and he was not ready for such a journey, but he promised silently that he would protect the secret until the time was right. He stood and looked around the cabin one last time. The broken seats, the faded walls, the silent instruments, all of them were witnesses of a lost age. He touched the wood where the word was carved, Aranya. It was no longer just a word. It was a promise. A promise that one day someone would rise again to the skies. Ravi left the plane and walked back into the jungle. The birds sang, the river flowed, and the world seemed ordinary again. But inside him, nothing was ordinary anymore. He carried the pendant close to his heart. He carried the memory of the city and the clouds. He carried the responsibility of knowledge. And he carried the story of Aranya, a story that had changed everything. As the sun set and painted the sky with colors of fire, Ravi smiled softly. The jungle had given him a gift, not just for himself but for the future. The secret of the Sky People was alive once more, and one day it would shine like the stars above.